institutional investments over the past year or 2 years.
David,
So
we
they're
appreciate
buying.
you. All right, we've got some breaking news. We'll see
Sure.
you soon, David. Thank you so much. John.
We do indeed have some breaking news. This comes a day after a difficult couple of days on Capitol Hill in both the House and the Senate for
driving on the shoulder. The police
All right, hello everybody. Can I get a quick audio check? Thumbs up from some folks or verbal reply, whatever works.
We hear you.
Great. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for calling into the spring flood outreach meeting that we have every year. I know we'll have some folks that are calling in and viewing this after the event. They'll be looking at the recording. I will be sending out both the link to the recording and a PDF of all the presentations that you're going to see here today following the event. And we've got 5 different presentations we're going to do today. If you have any questions while we're going through anything, please put the questions in the chat. We'll try to keep our eyes on it and answer those as they come through. And with that, we're going to start with the Spring Flood Outlook presentation from our representative from the Weather Service. And I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you. So I am Mary Beth Schreck. Probably most people have not heard of me yet. I'm the new hydrologist in the National Weather Service Quad Cities office here. So I just arrived in Iowa in September, coming from Alaska actually. So I did spend some time up in La Crosse, Wisconsin earlier in my career and really loved it there and being along the Mississippi River. So I'm glad to be back in the area. So you can go to the next slide. Oh, I can do it. I forgot I had control. Let's go up to that. This? Nope, the down arrow. Okay, I'm learning. Okay, so I wanted to go through the spring flood outlook that we issued last week. So the time and date that are at the upper right corner are just when this was created. So, and then I added slides to the presentation for today, so you'll see it on some other stuff too. So this was our second outlook for this spring. And then we have one more that will be coming out next Thursday, and that we'll have a briefing with. I should be able to get the invite out for that briefing tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. But we will be doing a whole briefing on all of this then. So in general, things are looking below normal for spring flooding. So yay, I'm sure everybody's excited for that. It has been very dry. We've had enough warm spells that our frost has thawed in the local area, and then it is thawing in other areas. So it's been decreasing overall, if not completely thawed. Probably after the next few days, it'll be a lot less too. And then, you know, our local area here doesn't have really any snow other than maybe northeast Iowa a little bit. So we don't really have the snowpack. Up north, the snowpack is less, things like that. So overall, we're looking at it to be below normal. So just looking at each of the factors here, and we'll get into each of these a little bit more, but as you can see, everything's either normal risk or lesser risk. So the main normal risk is river levels overall are not looking as low as I might expect after such little precipitation in the last several months. But and our frost depth when we did this was roughly normal. Now I guess it's if anything below normal since we don't have much. And then looking at the spring weather outlook, maybe, you know, a normal risk. So everything else looks like below normal at this point. So, not quite on. Okay, so temperatures and precipitation. So our temperatures in the western part of the state have been above average. We've actually, even though we've had some really cold temperatures, we've had some above normal temperatures, and it's kind of evened out overall to be pretty much average for the season. And then for precipitation, you can see we've been quite dry. So no surprise there, all experienced that. And then looking at just the seasonal snowfall for the region, we've got, you know, there's some snow to our north, and this was, again, from a week ago, so more has melted since then. But much of the snowpack to our north is actually doesn't have as much liquid in it as you might typically see in a season. So while there is snow up there, it's not an overabundance. Where you see the overabundance along the upper peninsula of Michigan and western lower Michigan is not coming toward the Mississippi River anyway. So I think they have a elevated spring flood risk over there. But if that water's not coming toward your area, then you're in the good spot, I guess. And then stream flows, we're seeing a lot of them actually pretty well near normal. It really doesn't get below normal until you get south of here into kind of eastern Missouri and through central and southern Illinois. So eastern Iowa and northern Illinois are staying fairly close to normal right now. And so when I did the first outlook of the season, we still had ice on a lot of our rivers. And then by last week, it was pretty much all gone. So, so we've pretty much eliminated our ice jam risk at this point. I think if we have a cold snap where a little bit is able to form, it won't get very thick and it's not going to last long at this point. So some more good news there. And then soil moisture and our frost depth, you could see, you know, we've got a lot, especially for Iowa and Illinois, we're seeing a lot of single-digit readings, and then as you get into central Illinois, zero frost depth. And this was last week, so it's even lower than that. And then you can see on the left side the soil moisture. So those warm colors are lower moisture in the soil. So so that's another. The ground is able to soak in some of the rain, a lot of the rain that we might get. So we've got some rain chances tomorrow and into next week, but hopefully for the most part, the ground will be able to soak that in. And then drought conditions. We've actually increased in parts, especially southern and eastern Iowa, northwestern Iowa, have increased to D1 or D2 drought now. D1 for much of eastern Iowa, and then there's just a small area now. This is just what came out this week as opposed to this graphic. So conditions worsening a little bit here. Again, we'll see what happens the next week or so, if any of this can be downgraded a little bit, or if we kind of stay the same for a little while, because it's going to take some time to recover from this drought. And then snow conditions, the band that you see across Iowa there is pretty well gone. I think the band across Illinois is gone as well at this point. It was just very recent when we did this outlook last week. So even less snow than you're seeing on this map right now. I guess most of it is across central northern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin at this point. So for our spring weather outlook, our Climate Prediction Center is showing for the next couple of weeks, or next week or so, I guess at this point, still above normal temperatures. And we're seeing the signal for above normal precipitation. The precipitation, you know, the verification of that is not as strong as the temperature verification, so you can take it with a little grain of salt. But we are, in the next week or so, we are seeing across, especially southern Iowa and then across Illinois and northern Missouri, we're seeing we should get some decent rains here. And then for the season through May, we've got kind of equal chances for above, below, or near average temperatures. So no clear signal, basically, that it's going to be real warm or that it's going to get real cold. And then precipitation, that the higher risk actually moves off to our east a little bit. So Illinois still showing some weak signal for some above normal precipitation. But again, you know, don't hang your hat on that. We'll see, you know, especially if it's rain and showers, thunderstorms, you know, might be a lot more spotty than that looks like. So for the long-range flood outlook here, so we've got a few sites, the squares there that are yellow and orange are showing that at the 50% chance mark, they are showing at least reaching minor flood stage. I think all of them, at least most of them, are barely reaching the bottom of minor flood at that point, and that's at some point in the spring season. So so there's maybe a weak signal for it. I think it's probably not going to be like that. The one red one there is the Wapsipinicon at DeWitt, and that's showing a 50% chance of reaching moderate flood stage. But I think that these are some of the areas we start seeing flood issues first. So nothing too major. So the key messages for the spring flood outlook, basically below normal probability. The one thing that could really change this is if we get into just a really wet pattern and we start getting a lot of rain. If there's a lot of rain over the snowpack that exists to our north, and that comes down, especially along the Mississippi River, and something like that. But if we get some, light rains or very scattered rains, that kind of thing, I think overall it should be able to soak into the ground, and we might see some rises in the rivers, but nothing too major. So the rest of what I want to talk about, so a little bit about flood inundation mapping. So this is something that, as you can see on the image there, it's been expanded across the country for the last few years. So we're in the last part of it now. Our local office in the red circle there, we started using this in October of 2025. We have not had much rain since then, or snow. So we have not had a lot of opportunity to get to use this yet and practice with it. It's still very new to us. We're checking a lot of areas where it is available to see if what is there is lines up with what, say, emergency managers know that happens when there is flooding and things like that. So we're still getting used to it. The rest of the country should be active with it by October of this year, and then we'll have these services across the country. So what is it? So we're basically making a picture out of what we have been saying in words. So we say we're putting water on the map. So instead of having text and more text that you have to read through, it's going to look like a picture that can kind of show you where flooding might be. So this is just an example image along the Iowa River. So it should have, so there are two forms of it. Did I have that on the, yeah, so there's dynamic, we call it FIM, the flood inundation mapping, and static. And the dynamic FIM will have how much rain is expected taken into account, and and then where do we expect flooding based on that. The static FIM is more based off of, we know when the river gets to 23.5 feet that this happens, and then it kind of makes a picture out of that. So so they're both used in different ways, and then we only have a couple sites in our area that are this partner FIM that have some more research into it in more detail that can be used. I know there are some others outside of here. I know there are probably people on this call outside of our forecast area, but they are few and far between overall. And then, so we talked about that. There are a couple of ways that you can view the FIM. You can go on the National Water Prediction Service website, which is probably where you're getting river-related information if you're getting it from the National Weather Service. And so when you go there, and you just do /FIM after just the water.noaa.gov, it will bring you to the site. You can see that the CAT FIM is a categorical flood inundation mapping, and that's that static FIM. So if you wanted to see if a location near you has that, you can go to that CAT FIM locations. And then there's also a GIS viewer that you can look at the FIM on there. I believe that is only the dynamic FIM, so it's only going to show stuff on there if there's flooding expected. So if you go there, though, you can see the entire country. And if you go south of here toward like southern Missouri, southern Illinois, you can see some of it there. You'll have to zoom in to be able to see it too. But you can take a look elsewhere if you want to kind of get a feel for what could be available. And then the last thing here is, our data collection needs. So I wanted to just mention that probably the best way that we're getting information from the general public, from any of you, you can join CocoRa's. So you can go to their website. I have a few brochures here for people here, but you can go to this website and sign up, and then you'll need a rain gauge. If they use a 4-inch rain gauge instead of the 8-inch gauges that we use like at our office. We still get great information out of it. You can, down further on that application page, you can buy, I think, one of their gauges and let them know if you need one. But one of the nice things about this, I think, is that, when we have our cooperative observers, they're expected, I think, to have an observation every single day. They go out of town, they should have somebody kind of, able to take an observation for them, even if they don't report it back to us for, until they get back. With this, if you're on vacation, then you can just do a multi-day report when you get back and say, when I got back, there were, 2.37 inches of rain in my gauge. I don't know when it fell, but it was, here are the dates, and then send that in. And that's still really helpful to know where the precipitation has been falling. And FEMA is actually now using these reports for disaster declarations too. So it's really helpful to get, the more observations we get, the better that data is. So that's one way you can help us, no matter where you are and no matter your age, because they even have, are you under 13 years old? You just have to have a parent or guardian name. So that's a pretty cool way to get kids involved too. So I think that's what I've got. So
I have a question. So as you start to get this inundation mapping more used by the public, as we see potential high water coming, is there some type of feedback that you're looking for the maps, and where would they report that feedback to?
Yeah, if you see something on there that that maybe whether it agrees or doesn't agree with your own experience in your area, yeah, you can contact the local National Weather Service office and just let them know, I live by this river and have been looking at this flood inundation mapping and have some feedback. I'm not sure if there's anything on, there might, when you're looking at on the website, there may be a feedback thing. I'm not sure. But yeah, you could certainly contact the local National Weather Service office, and we can integrate that in and improve it, because they're always wanting to improve it so it's more useful.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that pans out.
Me too.
I don't see any questions currently in the chat, but if you have any for any of the presenters today, go ahead and pop them in there. I'll keep an eye on it. All right. Next, we're going to move on to our partners at the State of Illinois, DNR. Tara McFarland's going to be sharing some of the data collection capabilities that they have and some new initiatives that they got going on.
All right, first I just wanted to do a mic check.
Yep, I can hear you nice and clear.
Great. All right, well, thank you for the opportunity to share some information with everyone in the group today. I am from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and we are called the Office of Water Resources, which is housed within the Natural Resources. And I am the Section Chief of Engineering Studies, but I am also the Flood Surveillance Program Manager. So that's what I'm going to mainly be talking about today. Go ahead and next slide. So we like to break up the flooding into the three main preparation, response, and then post-flood response, just of what resources that the Office of Water Resources has to the people on this call to reach out to us. And I'm really just giving you an overview of what resources the state of Illinois has. I recognize that there are other states on here, but we still thought it would be of benefit to just sort of show what kind of resources are out there, at least for the state of Illinois people on the call. But next, please. So we all know Illinois is very wet, and when I say Illinois, I'm pretty sure the surrounding states have this very similar problems. We have a lot of floodplains, a lot of rivers, and floods happen every year, whether they're the ice jams, whether they're flash floods due to increased rainfall, or if they're related to the riverine floods that we've been talking a lot about today already. So next. So the Office of Water Resources has three main divisions, and capital programs is where I sit. And that is more of our technical resources. We have engineering staff, we have modelers, GIS, and survey crews. And that's the group that does studies and actually implements some of the projects and programs that we have for the state. But then we also have a group called Resource Management. And some people only think of the Office of Water Resources related to our regulatory program, which is you do have to get permits when you're building in a floodway or if for dam safety. So that group is also within, so I just wanted to let you know that area is someone you would contact when you are building in those areas. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we also do have a coastal management, and that division is really just that little segment of Lake Michigan that touches Illinois. But we do have three offices. Springfield is the one I sit in, but we have one in the suburb of Chicago in Bartlett, and then we have one downtown in Chicago. Next. And I do have links on all my slides if anyone ever wants to look at any of the websites I'm talking about. So first I'm going to go ahead and talk about what resources we offer for when you're actually preparing this time of year, when you're thinking about flooding, where it might happen, doing some planning. So go ahead and these are the resources that we might have to help. So next, please. So the NFIP program, if you are in the NFIP program, you know that's the National Flood Insurance Program. And if you are in that program, you are well aware of it. It is administered by the statewide coordinator, housed within the Office of Water Resources. But there are certain requirements that if you want to be part of this program, many of our communities and are part of the program, but it does eventually help you get lower insurance rates. So it's partly it's a FEMA program, but the Illinois representative and I know all the other surrounding states all have their own NFIP programs. So just be aware that that program exists and it does help you plan and think ahead and help revise ordinances to help reduce those flood risks in your community. Next. We also in Illinois do have a mitigation program. Some of it, there is a mitigation program through IEMA, which is our Illinois Emergency Management Associate or Agency, but that our office does have some funding that is provided by our General Assembly, and there are certain requirements, but just know that we do have a small program within the state of Illinois that if your community has an interest, you would reach out to the Office of Water Resources to have those conversations. And I do have all of our contact information at the end. So there are some, just for those that live in Illinois, sometimes we can serve as that match to the FEMA grant or to the IEMA grant for mitigation, which is many times buyouts. And a lot of times the federal share, we can be that 25% match to help communities that are disadvantaged and need additional assistance. Next. We also, as I mentioned, have the regulations and permitting section. Just if you are doing any planning or development in flood areas that have been identified by FEMA, there are rules that have to be followed, and I'm just here to remind you that you definitely want to be aware of these rules, look into them, and before you do any construction, and have those conversations with our permitting section. Next. And then we also at the Office of Water Resources do help different communities, agencies, our sister agencies, and sometimes federal agencies just do those plannings reports that are needed, your hazard mitigation plans. We can be involved in that. My engineering studies group can attend those phone calls and provide technical support. And just know that we're out there to provide a resource. Next. And then as part of the engineering studies program, as I mentioned, we have those engineers and modelers available to help communities and to reduce their flood risk. And so we might come in and do a flood damage reduction study. We might look at alternatives. And then sometimes we can also do modeling if someone has a need for modeling. At this point in time, we are focusing on disadvantaged or distressed communities, and there is a little bit of a wait list. But if you ever have need, please reach out to me. My contact information is there, and we can have a conversation to find out if you would qualify or if there is a way that we can assist. Next. All right, now we're actually in a flood. Just like I will say, Illinois has had rain for the last 4 days. So I expect that drought is going to certainly rebound a little bit because all of central Illinois has been hit pretty consistently over these last 4 days, and we're expecting it next week as well. So that's good news for those that are concerned about the drought. And the good news is, as Mary Beth mentioned, because the ground was so dry and all those other factors that are related, we're not seeing flooding. So, but let's pretend we're having a flood. So what kind of resources does Office of Water Resources offer? Next, please. So last year we unveiled this. This is, I'm sure many of you are weather chasers out there and you're watching your areas to see where the radar's coming, what kind of flood you might expect. So I did work with our GIS staff and we've developed a dashboard. I used to have about 20 different websites open and I'm just flipping between them all the time, trying to track weather. So they put this together for me and I went ahead and made it public so that everyone can use it. And the link's there, there's a QR code. And the next screen will sort of show you what that is. Next. So it's basically shows the areas of concern, and there's a lot of different websites. We're not generating any new information. We're just summarizing it. So it's a one-stop, I call it one-stop shopping. So you just look here and you can really track where that flooding might occur. And just go on that website. Again, it's open to public and you just play around with it. You can click different areas. There's a lot of different weather resources and USGS, National Weather Service, all kinds of information on there. So just play around. But at the end of the day, for me, it tells me which areas of the state are potentially flooding up to those moderate and major floods. Those are the ones that we really track. But next slide, please. And then as part of flood surveillance for this for my state, I do put together a flood report when flooding is hitting those moderate or major levels. I like to summarize all the information and I try to identify where those flood impacts might be occurring. And then last year we went ahead and developed a dash or story map that I will send out an email to alert. A lot of times it's the legislative groups, the Corps, IEMA. And if you have an interest in getting those alerts from me in the state of Illinois, you can just email me and I can add you. But right now we decided to go ahead and turn that into a story map. So in next slide, right, it actually updates daily. And so at any point in time, this summarizes all the the very specific flood areas that we're watching, where those moderate and major floods might occur. And then it actually pulls all those gauges so you can look closely at those, see where those flood impacts are. And then when I send out my email, I will link you to this. In the past, I used to do this all by hand and try to screenshot pages to share with people, but now this is all automatic and you can look at it at any time. Next. And then we do have a flood surveillance crew. So if you have an area that's flooding and we're watching, I can send out our crew and we go out and document. Again, it's more for those moderate and major storm events or the ones that are expected to hit record-breaking levels. And so what we do is we go out in the field and we take photographs. We document what flooding areas we're seeing. And sometimes if it's a really high flood, we set high water marks and then we use those and we share those with our partners and they can use those to help calibrate their models that they've been generating over time. And I'll go ahead and do the next slide just to sort of show you what that looks like. So when we are out in the field, we also made this flood surveillance viewer. And again, this is open to the public and at any time you can look at this. And so if I have a crew out in the field taking photographs, as they enter that's all through a GIS platform, and it's as they take the photographs and make the notes, they update it live. So I can be sitting back in the office and I can see exactly what's going on in the field. So this is really helpful for our partners and people on this call that might want to see what the flooding's looking like, and especially for emergency managers and those types of people to know where they need to focus their energies. Next. And this is an example of what we're doing. We're capturing photographs, we're taking notes, we're trying to indicate how many structures are impacted that we're viewing. Next slide. And this is all georeferenced, and that's what you would see in that flood viewer. But we also do have drone crew that we send out in the field with part of our flood surveillance. And I don't know how many people on the call have been out in the field and you hit the end of a road and you really want to go look over there, but you know it's not safe to drive. So we do have our drone capabilities and we're able to go up in the sky and actually look to see those flood impacts that we can't see on the ground. And I would just add that we do try to track flash flooding. Those are a little bit harder to plan. So if you're in the state of Illinois and you're having an urban or flash flooding event or riverine, and you just want to know if I have a crew available, and depending on availability and resources, I can send that crew out and document your flood event. Next slide, please. And this was something cool we did last year. It was in Carmi, Illinois, Southern Illinois. They had a lot of flooding. We sent our drone crew out there and we were able to this is just a mosaic of about 1,600 photographs that the drone took. And we're able to really overlay those on aerial maps and show what flooding is happening at that moment. And that was really important to share with the decision makers and those legislative officials and things like that. So that's something fairly new, but I hope to continue doing that effort. Next. And just another resource we have, Mary Beth talked about their inundation mapping. We've been working on this for a little bit while. Whenever we have very good hydraulic modeling, we're able to tie this into your flood stages. So we recognize that a lot of people don't always understand elevations, and if someone says the water's going to hit a certain elevation, but you're very familiar with your flood stage, right at your gauge that you live near. So we developed this, it's a tool where these are just 3 separate screenshots. So what you're able to do is if you're watching the weather and you find out that there's a projected storm coming and that the nearby stage by your community is going to hit a certain stage, you just move that slider bar to what that stage indicates it's going to be. And then it actually develops an inundation map, and those are those blue areas. And it does also account for depth. So you can actually see how deep the water's going to go at those different areas. And then you're able to zoom in and really look around in your area, and you can see which structures might be impacted, but you can also look at what roads might be inundated and also help you with your access and egress and emergency plans during a storm event. And then, of course, you can use this tool during planning and post as well. Right now, this is just available for the Mississippi River in this area, but the Illinois River should be published within the next year. So, and at any point with any of these resources, feel free to reach out to me and I can show you more of how to use them. All right, next, please. And then we do have a great product that we've been developing along with the Corps of Engineers and other partners, and we call it the Structures at Flood Risk and called the Safer website. And what we've been doing is calculating flood damages for all the different flood frequency events, anywhere from a 10-year event up to the 500-year. And we're able to estimate how many structures and the value of that damages that could occur at those different flood events. And again, you can use this also during a flood to see where flooding might be occurring. This is not open to the public, but if you have interest, we've been going out and doing outreach over the last year, and I can walk you through it. And we have a user guide and we have videos to show how to use this. But if you're a planner and you have interest in really learning about some of that risk in your community or your county, then this is a great tool for you. Next. And then our last tool that I just like to highlight is it's a really quick and dirty little tool that we call the Elevation Finder. And this is just, it seems like a lot of people like to use it. It's just a map that you can click any point and it will tell you the exact elevation of that point. This is just using the most current LiDAR. But then you're also able to turn on or off the existing floodplain map or your FIRM, your flood insurance rate map, and it tells the extent of those different flood maps. But then this is a layer that you can toggle on or off to. It's called the hillshade relief, and this just really helps somebody understand the topography of the community, and it tells where water might roll based to the lay of the land. So again, there's the link. It's just a real quick way to help you have a better understanding of a particular location within your area of concern. Next. All right, real quick, I'll go after the flood has happened. What can you reach out to the Office of Water Resource for? Next, please. And for those of you active and part of the NFIP program, you do have some requirements after a storm that you have to do some substantial damage determinations, and those are slightly different than the ones required from FEMA. And again, those on the call that are familiar with this and part of the NFIP program are well aware of their requirements, but just know if you have questions or aren't sure if you need to do this, please reach out to the Office of Water Resources and the contacts in a few slides. Next. And then engineering studies after an event, if you are realizing that you have some new issues that you don't have the capacity or technical resources to evaluate, you could reach out to us, to engineering studies, and we could try to look at some of those issues, see why you had that flooding. Sometimes communities will reach out if they're having trouble dewatering after a flood event, and maybe just to evaluate some of their existing infrastructure to see if there's ways to enhance and reduce their flood risks. Next. All right, so that is all I have, and here are the contacts for those different groups that I was talking about. But if anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And then I always do give a plug that we're a state agency, we're here to assist you. So if there's anything that you see in some of your surrounding states or see a tool or a resource that you think would be a benefit to many, many people in the state, please reach out to me and give me your ideas, because we're always looking to improve. So I appreciate the opportunity, and if there's any questions.
Great, thank you, Tara. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I did want to ask, during an event, if a community has need for some of the resources that you just mentioned, would they go through their county EOC to try to request that support during a flood event, or should they try to contact these POCs that you have listed on this last slide directly?
Yeah, I think for now, I mean, I know the communities are very used to reaching out to their EMAs and they are welcome to do that. And I don't want to break that process. But if they have questions how to use the resources that I specifically outlined today, or if they're having a flood event and they really want me to come out and take pictures and do that, they're better off reaching out to me directly, and then we can have that conversation. But I appreciate that question.
All right, great. All right, I know Tara has another commitment at 2 o'clock, so if you have any questions for her, to please enter it before that or just contact her directly. All right, thanks, Tara.
All right, thank you,
Now
everyone.
I'm gonna switch over to our next presenter. The city engineer from the city of Waterloo is gonna share some of the efforts that they have ongoing with regards to their storm water program and relief. I'll turn it over to you, Jamie.
All right. Hopefully everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Good afternoon. Jamie Knutson, city engineer for Waterloo. I want to talk today a little bit about the two SWIFTs, the system-wide improvement framework that Waterloo has completed over the last 8 years. I've been doing flood control here in Waterloo since 1994. And there's been a lot of changes both from the Corps as well as we've seen a lot of interest from the private side as well, especially from the insurance companies that are taking a keen interest in at least how Waterloo maintains our levee system. Let's see. Okay, make sure I got this going here. So I want to give you just give you an overview here of our levee system. This is our flood plan, and you can see the orange is the levees. We've got a little bit of green flood walls in here. This doesn't show all of the things that are on our system, but it's just the cover sheet for our plans. As I go into the plans, or you go into these plans, it gives up close aerial images as well as information on each closure structure, gate wall structure, that sort of thing. Little history on our flood control system. We've got 18 miles of earthen levees, 2 miles of flood walls, 165 gate wells, which is an ungodly amount, 47 closure structures, 34 lift stations, and 1 dam. It's a very large system, at least in my eyes, having to deal with the sheer number of penetrations through the levee. It's really interesting to keep it all maintained. And our levees are designed to a height of 30 feet. These are the top 10 crests in Waterloo. Unfortunately, I have been here for 4 out of the 10. And I missed the 93 one by a year. The crests from the 60s that you see here, those were the ones that triggered Congress in 66, 67, somewhere in there, to provide funding for Waterloo and several other communities for flood control. But yeah, 2008 was our flood of record, and 2016 was not terribly far behind. Just so you understand what it looks like, what some of those levels look like. We're standing on one of the bridges looking downstream, and this is right after 2008. We're 21 feet above normal water levels. It was a very scary event, and kudos to the Corps for the way they overbuilt our levees, and we really didn't have a huge amount of damage in 2008 and even less in 2016. This is standing in about the same place, looking at the opposite side of the river there in 2016. Again, just to give you an idea of what our floods look like. This is about 17 feet above normal water levels, and the railroad bridge in the foreground there that you see, that one fell in 2008. The piers under a portion of it were undermined, and 3 sections of the bridge ended up in the river. They came in, the railroad company came in and straightened them, pulled them out of the river, straightened them, and set them all back in place. So as far as our SWIFTs, we've had 2. We've had one for our sanitary gate wells. Our sluice gates on the sanitary gate wells were, for lack of a better term, mostly frozen in place. We couldn't move them. The sluice gates that were in there would not move up, wouldn't move down, or if they did, it was not nearly enough for full closures. We knew this was going to be an extremely expensive fix based on the numbers of that you saw of all these gates that we have. So we started talking to the Corps about it, and I believe we were the first, or either the first or one of the first locals to be able to do a SWIFT for the Rock Island district. The one thing that we were fortunate, and I say fortunate in the fact that we were able to secure a large amount of SRF funding through the state to help pay for this. And we had already been designing the projects when we went to the Corps to ask about this, because it got to the point we were looking, and you'll see it down in here, we were looking at about a $4 million project to do all of these SWIFTs in one project. We bid it and we came in $2 million over the estimate. So 4 million was bad enough, 6 million was even worse. So we went back to the Corps, and the letter you have in front of you is the second time we went back to the Corps to ask for an extension on our SWIFT, because we just could not, even with the SRF funding, we just could not swing a $6 million project all at once. So the Corps was great to work with. They let us go back, break it up into 2 contracts, and then go out for construction on both of those separately. Here's this is part of the gate well plan set. All the little dots are sanitary gate wells that we needed to replace. And these were the gate well structures themselves were fine. We went ahead and needed to replace all the sluice gates inside them. But this kind of shows all the easy ones that we had to do. And when I say easy, I'll show you what the hard ones were in a few slides here. But this is what our consultant ended up doing. We were replacing all the sluice gates, stems, guides, all of it, the openers, everything. We also ended up cutting the top about 4 feet off of all of these gate wells. The exposed portions were, I don't want to say having problems, but they were starting to show their age a little bit, and we wanted to put in new hatches. The Corps had originally installed cast iron hatches, and we swapped those out with aluminum hatches to make access much easier and safer. But one of the things that we settled on for all of our gate wells, whether they're the storm or the sanitary, and I should say sluice gates, is we've switched everything over to fiberglass reinforced gate, specifically from Plastifab out in Colorado. They provide the gate, the stem, the guides, the covers, the handrails, everything that's needed to replace your existing sluice gates, and they are and have been approved by the Corps. The nice thing about these is being fiberglass and stainless steel for all the pieces that go with it. We don't have to worry as much about, especially in a sanitary situation, with these gates deteriorating from being down in a sanitary sewer. The second portion of the project that we did involves some much more difficult ones. Our treatment plant is down here, and we've got 3 of these gates, as well as one over here, that are on our 60-inch industrial line, or our 60-inch interceptor lines. I don't know if any of you have been close to a 60-inch sanitary sewer, but it is not a pleasant thing. The one on this side of the river is on our industrial line that comes from the tannery and from Tyson. So it's extra difficult to deal with things on that line. And then this one, it was a little different. Along here, the Corps had placed, I think that shows on the next page here, the Corps had placed along here all of the sanitary sewers that came out to our interceptor on the wet side, or what would be the wet side of the levee. They ended up putting plug valves on the sanitary sewers as they came under the levee and out to the interceptor. One of the things that with a plug valve is if it goes bad, you have to dig into the levee. So we, excuse me, we came up with a plan to go ahead and cut all of those sanitary lines from the side streets. We installed a new line, trunk line down on the dry side to a new gate well, and just had one new connection out there. And then we were able to abandon all of those plug lines in place, filled them full of grout and left them there, which was a really nice way to take care of, get rid of 4 of the closure structures and get it down to 1. Again, just another portion of that phase 2 gate well SWIFT. You can see on some of these, we were having to go in and come clear down and cut through a big chunk of the levee in order to get some of those replaced. This is eventually what you want, is the letter from the Corps, the get out of jail free card, so to speak, of saying that we are no longer, or that we are in compliance with our sanitary gate wells. The Corps comes up, once we were done with construction, the Corps comes up, does a special inspection on all of the facilities that we rehabilitated. They go through it, make sure they're happy with it, and eventually this is what you want to get to, is a letter stating that all of our hard work, all of the things that we had to do over the course of the 8 years came to fruition. And you can see we just got out of this, or just got this particular SWIFT completed not too long ago. And again, this one took about 8 years to complete. So it's one of those that it was a long time coming, and everybody is extremely happy. And a lot of thanks to the Corps for their help and their willingness along the way as we worked our way through this. Our second relief, or our second SWIFT, was for a relief well. Been doing this a long time. Didn't even realize we had relief wells on our system, to be honest with you. We happened to be on a webinar and got to looking and did a little more research on our end, and oh my goodness, we did have 2 of them on a stormwater lift station. So we went back to the Corps asking for a SWIFT in order to get this one going, because we knew, well, I'll say it this way, we had no idea what it was going to take for this to get these relief wells either rehabilitated or replaced. So we started early with the Corps. asking them, for help, to be able to do this. And we wanted to make sure that we did this correctly. And this, I don't know how many of you are used to relief wells or not, but, we did not know. We ended up having to hire Terracon to come in, prepare a drilling program for us. And before, actually, even before that, we had Terracon help us hire a contractor to come in and test the wells to begin with, I should say. Once we got the wells tested, then it was, okay, going back to the core, trying to find out what the original baselines were. And, on a system this big and this old, nobody was able to find, either them or us, were able to find any baseline data for our wells. All we knew was that one well on the south end of our lift station seemed to be okay, and that one well on the north side didn't seem to be okay. So, working with the Corps, it was determined that we would be able to leave the south one alone, and then go ahead and redo the north one. So my staff worked with Terracon and the Corps pretty closely to come up with a new set of plans in order to abandon the old well in place and then install a new one. And what you're seeing here is where the outlet piping comes through the existing wall, the wing wall of the inlet structure for the lift station. The old well that we abandoned in place, we cut down a bunch of it in order to extend the outlet to our new well, which we drilled about 10 feet directly north of the old well. This is, it was about an 80-foot deep well, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, about 80 foot deep. So there's some pictures, and I want to give you a little idea of what this is. Here's our contractor working on testing the south well. You can see our new north well here. It was actually really interesting. If none of you have ever dealt with a relief well, what you're seeing here, and if I was able to zoom way in, this is the screen for the well going down into the well casing itself, and then adding the gravel pack to it in this particular one. And then along with that, there's pump testing, video testing of all of the wells, and what you end up with is a graph looking something like this to determine that your well is actually doing what it is supposed to be doing. Again, just some additional photos of what these relief wells look like. This is where we made the connection from the old to the new. This is our new relief well. And then this is a cross section of what the well actually ended up with. You got your gravel pack and filters down at the bottom, plug, and then bentonite seal, and then grout above it. But we spent an awful lot of time with Terracon and the Corps to get us to the point where we could go ahead and actually drill this thing, test them both again. The longest part of all of this, believe it or not, was actually with Terracon and being able to get a drilling program put in place. I think that took about a year, I believe, is what it took for us to get that, and working with the Corps to get that in place and make sure everybody was satisfied with that in order to drill the new well and how to abandon the old well. This project, it took about 3 years or so to get through that process, get it drilled, and the old one abandoned. Now, as we've learned, there is a requirement that we test these, 2 wells on a 5-year cycle. So now that, we've got them drilled, and we can continue to test those on that 5-year cycle and make sure we're in compliance on, that portion of our O&M manual. So just some lessons that were learned along the way from our couple of Swifts. Again, as I said earlier, I think we were maybe the first one that had to go through this Swift process, and it was when you're kind of the first one, you don't know what you're doing, and there's no examples, so it was it was a little scary, to be honest with you, but we spent, again, a lot of time with the Corps and their staff, and they were absolutely great to help us get through this process. There was a lot of back and forth with our documentation and the things that they wanted to see, so it was a really good partnership. If you have some of these operational challenges, talk to the Corps about doing these Swifts. It gives you an opportunity to plan out how you're going to fix these things at hopefully a pace that you can afford. As I mentioned earlier, that $6 million was just way too much of a bite in 1 year, but spreading it out over almost 8 years, that was a lot easier for us to handle. That didn't mean we still weren't worried if we had issues or more floods on the system or things like that, but at least the Corps knew we were actively trying to get it fixed. So communicate early and often with the Corps. The other thing, these things can take years. As you saw, we had one that was 8 years, one that was a little over 3 years. You just have to take the time to plan out what it is that you want to do. And as far as our Gatewell Swift, we had an initial plan. We had to go back and amend it with the Corps not only once but twice, because it took longer to get to construction for both of those phases than what we had anticipated and stuff. So again, the Corps was great, provided a lot of support for us, and they understood that we had stuff under design and were moving forward, and they were very supportive of changing the schedule and allowing us to be able to move ahead at our pace. Me and my staff did a lot of the letters, schedules, the fundings, determined all that, but there were things that we had to hire the experts for. We hired AECOM here locally for the design and inspection of our gate wells. I mentioned earlier that the city used SRF funding for our gate well portion, which was a big deal because we were under a consent decree on our sanitary sewer system at the time. So we had, it was about $75 million worth of other sanitary work that was going on throughout these 10 years. And so adding an additional 6 was a big deal. The relief wells, we hired Terracon. They were responsible for doing a lot of the heavy design for the wells themselves. It really helped for us that we have somebody here locally that in Terracon that had done this relief well testing with other clients of theirs. So they had a grasp of what was going to be required by the Corps. Again, we hired our contractor well ahead of time to do some initial testing so that we could determine what needed to be replaced and if we were going to have to replace it. And the bottom one, like I talked about a little bit, there was no baseline data that anybody could find for those relief wells. So what we kind of determined was that for the south well, we would use that testing information as the baseline for moving forward. And then our new well obviously has new testing data, and we'd use that moving ahead as well. So again, these things can be can be kind of scary when you're looking at them, but again, if you have issues that you know are going to take time, going to have a lot of effort to them and a lot of cost, the SWIFT is a great way to go to keep your levies active in the rehabilitation program, knowing that you still have time to work on some of these problems. And that was the biggest thing for us, is that we were able to schedule this stuff so that it fit our funding needs. And that was, I guess, the biggest benefit to the city. And if I had more of them, or if I had more issues, I would certainly use them again. But I've got my contact information up on the screen. Certainly you can contact either myself or my assistant, Wayne Castle, who did a lot of this work as well. We'd be happy to talk to anybody that's entertaining the thought of doing a SWIFT, providing some of the letters and some of the background information that we have. If that's helpful to anybody, we're more than happy to share it, but it's a really good process to use. And I would encourage anybody that's concerned about how to maintain some of these things on their systems to look at this and talk to your core folks, and see if they can help you with this. And I guess that's what I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I didn't look in the chat to see if there was any there, but
I don't see any questions currently in the chat, Jamie, but
Okay.
I know it was a lot of effort by everybody to get through, and I'm glad it worked out so positively. So I think I heard somebody speak up.
yeah, it's again, it really truly was a partnership between us and the Corps in both of these, because again, it was relatively new to both of us, and it's just something that worked out well. I think for both sides, the Corps was able to show that the process worked like it was intended, and then again, it helped the city on the financing side and moving some of these projects forward. So
All right.
I
Well, if
guess
any
with
questions
that,
come up, if any questions come up, I'll make sure I pass them along. I don't see any in the chat currently, but
Okay.
thank you very much for that, Jamie. With that, I'm going to turn it now over to our Levee Safety Program Manager, Bill Conway. He's going to talk about Megger testing at pump stations.
Hey, thanks, Amanda. Does the audio sound okay?
Sounds good.
All right, great. Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to talk about, I'm Bill Conway, Levee Safety Program Manager, USACE, Rock Island District. I'm going to talk about Megger testing at pump stations. If your levee has electric pumps, you're probably aware that USACE requires you to Megger test them annually, part of your O&M. So in my brief talk, now I'm going to give some background information about what a Megger test is, what the USACE requirements are for your O&M, why it is a good idea to do Megger testing, and some things to be aware of. So the word Megger is a brand name, actually, but it has become the generic term that people usually use. So most of the USACE published guidance uses the term Megger. So a Megger test is another word for that is mega ohm test. It's the same thing. And what they are, kind of the more descriptive name, is they are electrical insulation resistance tests. So it's used to check the condition of electrical insulation on equipment like motors and cables. The figure on this slide is to help visualize the basic concept. So the insulation along an electric wire that connects electricity is comparable to a pipe that carries water. The left side of this figure shows a pump that's creating water pressure through a pipe. So the water pressure then causes water to flow through the pipe. The walls of the pipe cause friction that creates slight resistance to the flow. And of course, if the pipe were to spring a leak, you'd waste water and lose some water pressure. On the right side of the figure, voltage is what causes electricity to flow along the copper wire. And like with a water pipe, there's some resistance to flow through the wire. But of course, there's much less resistance along the copper wire than there is through through the insulation that surrounds the wire. But like with a water leak, the insulation can become damaged and lose its resistance. So, yeah, kind of the analogy here is this water leak through a water pipe compared to, this is meant to show some damage to the insulation around this copper wire here. So Megger testing is primarily for maintenance and reliability of equipment, but also for life safety hazards like shock and electrical fire. USACE inspection requirements derive primarily from the Code of Federal Regulations, which basically says Megger tests of all installations shall be made whenever wiring has been subjected to undue dampness, and at least once every year, and a record should be kept of the test results. So in the USACE levy inspection reports, and it's been like this for a long time, so as part of the checklist portions, this is a snip from one. Under the pump station section, it talks about Megger testing shown here. To get an acceptable rating, the Megger test has to be done in the last year, and it needs to show that the installation meets manufacturers or industry standards. And something I should clarify, so Megger testing only applies to electric pumps. We don't require Megger testing for diesel pumps. And a little more about this inspection, so just for your awareness. So this line item on the inspection report for Megger testing is not one of the 18 critical line items, if that sounds familiar at all, that the Corps used to determine eligibility for the Public Law 8499 rehabilitation program based on the current rules. So you know, it is possible to get an unacceptable rating on this if you don't do your Megger testing, but it doesn't affect your PLD 499 eligibility. But I'll talk some more about why it's a good idea. So first, the primary components that need to be tested are motor winding insulation, and what that is the insulation system that surrounds and separates the copper windings of the pump's electric motor from each other and from other components, so they can carry voltage without shorting or leaking current to the ground. And then also motor feeder cables that carry power to the motor. And there may be other components in your pump station that should be tested. You kind of leave that up to an electrician, but these are the primary ones that we think of. So it's important because insulation degrades over time due to moisture and temperature cycling between hot and cold over and over again, and contaminants like dirt, especially, and oil. So routinely documenting and plotting Megger test results can help identify how much degradation is occurring and how fast. And I'll talk more about that later. And a failure of your insulation then, your pump components, can cause an unplanned motor outage or damage to equipment and also personal safety hazards potentially. The bottom line is you do Megger testing and give you an early warning so motors can be repaired or replaced before they fail. Since the worst possible time for them to fail would be during a flood, so you'd much rather get a heads up early. So it's sort of an investment then to improve your odds of that sort of disaster. So what the results can look like then is if you're seeing low insulation resistance after a flood or high humidity, that might just indicate moisture in the windings, the cable insulation, and that could be reversible with drying it out and potentially cleaning it. Or if your results show a declining trend over multiple years, that would suggest aging insulation or contamination or hot-cold cycle thermal stress. But knowing that would allow you to plan for refurbishment or replacing it before it fails. And then if a new Megger test shows a sudden drop compared to the last test, that might indicate damage to the insulation or a cable fault or serious contamination. And if you saw that, that'd be a reason to really consider keeping the motor out of service and investigating further. So Megger testing does not diagnose every problem your electric motor could have, but it's a key early warning indicator for many insulation-related failures. So it's performed typically using a handheld tester, which is shown here in a picture, which is called a megohm meter, or it's just called a Megger tester. So a bunch of different brands make these. They all do basically the same thing. So it measures how much the insulation resists current flow. The tester itself, although it doesn't, you can't see in the picture, but it has two lead wires that come out of it, a hot lead and a ground lead. So the hot lead applies voltage to the wiring, and the ground lead senses any leakage. And if it reads high resistance, so that'd be many mega ohms, that'd mean good insulation. And if it's reading low resistance, then that's what it means you've got some kind of deterioration or contamination, or you're developing a ground fault. And the Menger testing, I guess, important thing, it's a non-destructive test, and it's pretty standard condition assessment tool for rotating machinery used in industry. So unfortunately, like other electrical work, Menger testing should be performed by qualified electrical professionals that are familiar with this sort of work. So for levy sponsor, if you are a city, then you may have in-house utility or public works electricians that are trained in doing this sort of testing, and they know all the safety protocols like lockout, tagout. If you're not a city, there are you can contract industrial electrical contractors that are experienced with sort of testing, ideally for water, wastewater, or some sort of water pump. And then there's specialized motor shops too that can do this testing that can follow the standards. But an important thing is that whoever you hire to do this testing for you knows how to do it. They know how to select the proper test voltage and duration, and critically, they know how to interpret results and recognize when low readings indicate safety concerns. So much of interpreting these results are comparing them to past results. So you really need to maintain that record, and you really need, if you're paying the money to someone to do this testing, you really want to get your money's worth and get them to interpret these results for you. So, because if all you really wind up with, is just numbers on a printed out report, then if you're not that familiar with it, it's just not going to be very valuable to you. So you got to make sure that you can have context for the results. And again, so that means tracking your records over time and being able to compare the new tests to the old tests. See if hopefully you're getting consistent readings year to year, but if you're seeing a spike drop, then you want to pause and look at this a little more closely. And if you're seeing a slow trend downward, it'd help to have a professional that would help you interpret, all right, just how much more life might this have in it? Because I don't think it's an exact measurement. Like, I don't think you do mega testing and it'll tell you, all right, well, this pump has about 5 years left before it needs work. I think it's a little less specific than that, but it can give you a good sense. With professionals that are used to seeing these, it can be really valuable. And by the way, the kind of data then should be recorded. And hopefully, your professional knows these things, but like ambient temperature, humidity, and dew point, because there's some variables like that can alter the results. So you want to make sure you're doing an apples to apples comparison of previous results. So if you would like more information about Menger testing, here's a couple sources of guidance. So for the core, the main one is Engineering Manual 1110-2-3105, Mechanical and Electrical Design of Pump Stations. But for the details of that, it refers back to the main industry standard, which is the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers Standard 43. Here, the recommended practice for testing electrical installation resistance of rotating machinery. So I think if you hire someone, that's the standard they will probably follow and should follow. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
All right, thanks, Bill. I'm not seeing any questions currently. But if I see any come up, I'll definitely pass it on.
All right, thanks, everyone.
I can just take the amount over here.
All right. So I'll share my screen again. I will tell you online, My computer does not like it when I switch from standard screen sharing to presentation view, so. Let's go ahead and fix that. There we go, excellent. You want the mouse there?
Oh, you can just, I mean, if you want to do that, that's great. Okay, we ready?
Ready?
All right. Hi, all. I'm Sarah Jones. I'm the Chief of Emergency Management here at Rock Island District. And Amanda asked me to talk to you today about really our response authority and capabilities under that authority, including data collection. So I got some data for you today. A lot of this is probably going to be a refresher for you, but we'll just hit a few high points on how we can help you, and then open up for questions. So for us to actually get engaged in the event, we have to have specific conditions that are out there. So we have to have a threat of flooding that exists, whether it's forecasted or we're actually above flood stage. The state and local resources have to be fully engaged, and we have to have a declaration from the commander for us to actually provide assistance. That would be either whether it's direct or technical assistance, and we'll talk more about that. So that district commander's declaration is what authorizes us to activate our emergency operations center, which moves from an office of 6 to an office of 25 to 30. It just depends on the level of the event. And then it also gives us the authority to provide support with supplies and equipment, the technical support, and any other assistance that's needed. Our triggers are really tied to the National Weather Service forecast, and then key river gauge elevations that correspond with specific actions that are performed by the local communities and levee sponsors. So our flood teams have established flood emergency action plans, and we have key triggers that at what time we're going out as it relates to some of the operations that you have going on. We might be going out earlier than that in certain situations when we determine there's a greater risk out there. Specifically, one example would be if we have levee repairs or we are embarking upon levee repairs after a prior flood event that's caused damage. We'd like to get out there to start observing what's going on, earlier on, so we can offer advice, interim measures if necessary, and really understand the conditions. In general, it's not uncommon for us to activate our EOC and deploy before the state. I would say that happens pretty regularly just because their threshold is much higher, and like I said, with our ability to activate anytime once we reach flood stage, we have just more latitude there where we can start getting resources out to provide more of the technical assistance. So there's two types of assistance that we have. The first being technical, and that is really just the offering advice via the flood teams that we have, identifying feasible solutions to those unique situations that happen out there. We have teams of, we got 7 flood teams to cover each of the 7 flood areas, and each of those teams is, I'm going to say, roughly 15-ish people. And we also have now kind of a reserve team that's there for larger events. If we need to, we will pull from outside of our district if the event is large enough, and we need to access additional people to support the needs of the local community and the state. Those resources are those folks that we identify as flood area engineers. That's just the name we've given them. The background that they have varies. We do have their engineers, biologists, real estate specialists. We have program managers, all types of backgrounds, but they're all trained in proper flood fight techniques. And then we can reach back to that, the expertise within engineering, from geotech, hydraulics, structures, where we have issues that require more in-depth expertise. This service is free. There's no charge for us to deploy any of our people to support your needs. The other type of assistance we are providing is direct, and that is the typical issuance of supplies and equipment. We can do emergency measures in various situations to support high-risk areas. We also can do rescue operations if that fits within the situation. We have the equipment available, and directing flood fight operations is also something that we can do, but the legal authority resides with that local entity. Our assistance is meant for life safety and protection of property, and it's meant to be temporary in nature. So, and we cannot provide assistance directly to individuals. Next slide. So in order, there's a process to obtain assistance from the Corps. We follow it specifically because, we're working directly with the state, and they have the responsibility for adjudication of resources. So we have to be in line with so they know what's going on within their AOR. So we really push to ensure that the local entities, including sponsors, we're asking you to, if you have a request for direct assistance for some type of material, supplies and equipment, that you're reaching out to your local emergency management agency, and then that's checking with them first. And if they can't support you, it's going to the county. So if that doesn't work, though, if there's a situation, oftentimes we have flood team members that are deployed to the field supporting your needs, and you might say, hey, we need a pump. That often gets communicated through the back channels back to the EOC, but we're also telling you, hey, we'll work it through the back channels, but you have to submit your request through the proper channels as well. So it's kind of checking the box, but we're not going to let that hold up the need. But we need to make sure that the state can't support this, because if they can, that's kind of, it's in their AOR. They need to have the opportunity to respond. The only time that we would consider USACE assistance ahead of a state resource really is if time is a factor. So if we are in a situation where we can't wait for a state request, because maybe the area is, maybe the issue is that you're too far, the location is too far away to get the material, or the need is just urgent, then we can bypass that state resource request issue and try and help. But we'll still want the communication to happen, but we will not let that hold the situation up. We are not able to stockpile. So in other words, if it's coming to the end of the event and you're asking for material to get ready for the next event, that's not something that we can do. And lastly, on this slide, I'll just mention that emergency measures would follow the same process for support from requesting through the state, getting the locals and the state engaged. If we're going to do any kind of emergency construction, we want to have a cooperation agreement signed between the local sponsor or the state and us, just identifying that these measures are temporary and they must be removed after the event is done. Next slide. So just, the more information you can give us about your request, the better. It just helps us to really understand what the need is. Oftentimes we get requests that might be a little bit, we need a mile of hose, and so we have to do some validation. Some of that can slow up the process a little bit. So just understanding what your needs are, and the more information you can give us about that, the better, the easier it's going to be, and the quicker we can actually respond to your request. We have staging areas. The staging areas we do have, you can see on the right-hand side, the tiny orange dots are all locations within the Rock Island AOR, but they are all of those are USACE USACE facilities, except for Quincy. Quincy down there, we have a National Guard facility it's a cold site, I would say. We only use it when we activate and move things down there temporarily. But you see it's not, we understand it's going to take time. It's the responsibility of the local entity to come and pick things up from us, and that's going to take a little time just given our location. Whether you are close, a levy sponsor that is located, levy district that's close to a staging area or, several hours away, the request process is the same. There's no basically special favors for a district that's near us. We have to follow the same process, no matter what. We'll tell you, once you send in your request or contact us, we'll tell you where to pick it up from, and we'll connect you with the points of contact who will load the trucks at our warehouses. And then we store, I mentioned the storing supplies at USACE facilities. Approving the request from the state usually takes just a couple hours, so we're really fast on turning those around. And again, like I said, we may have to validate what the requirements truly are, so the more information you can give us, the better. We are the National Flood Site Material Center, so we threw our numbers up here of what we currently have in stock. We try to maintain a large stockpile for events that happen across the nation. We also have emergency contract capability for supplies. That's typically to restock our warehouses, our facilities. But it gives us the ability to, within 24 to 48 hours, restock sandbags and poly and other things pretty quickly if we start depleting those resources. And in that national capability, we have for Gabion baskets, which formerly HESCO, we have a new contractor now, but there's also a technical advisor that's in that contract. So if there's a levy district community that is installing a lot of HESCO or Gabion baskets, I still struggle with that. It's McAferry now. If you're installing that material, even if it's not something that we have provided, we could potentially deploy that technical advisor out to monitor your installation, ensure that that's going well, and identify, if there's unique challenges with installation, they can often help address those issues. Oftentimes you might be running into situations where you have to install it in to cross a pipe or something. So there's a lot of unique things that happen that advisor can help guide and train folks on. Depending on the need and the size of the flood, we can potentially move material closer to impacted areas like I said, at staging areas. We could identify temporary staging areas. We like to work with the state on that, and if they've got some locations, we'd be happy to move things closer. Reimbursement is going to be required for supplies. So this is where it's not 100% federally funded. So technically our ER directs that any supplies that we're providing, sandbags, poly, Gabion baskets, it's the responsibility of the state or local entity to reimburse us after the fact with either in kind or financially. However, this can often be waived by the commander, and it typically is waived by the commander. I'll just say that. So we do have you signed a hand receipt just in case, and that also just confirms that you're gonna maintain the supplies and equipment, really the equipment in good condition, because you also have to return those pumps in the way they were received. So if something happens while they're deployed, we can provide a mechanic to come out there and try and troubleshoot the issue, try and repair it. If we have to, we can call Xylem, our contractor, to come out. They've done that before. It is the responsibility of you to provide the fuel for those pumps, but once once we're ready to return them, we don't need you to add fuel. We don't need you to top off any of the fluids, just need to get those returned back. And you'll have to bring it back to the warehouse where you received it from. And our diesel pumps are now equipped, I think we've talked about this before in past meetings, but they're now equipped with Field Smart technology. And that is really gives us the ability to virtually track the location of those pumps when they're deployed. It also gives us identified usage and alarms. So it's really helped us to improve kind of oversight of those pumps and ensure that there's not damages that are occurring while they're out there. So next slide. This is just a kind of catalog of the supplies and equipment we have. The newest being, of course, we've had them now for a few years, but the culvert plugs, 48-inch and 54-inch plugs that I don't know that any other core district has these, and we obtained them from another district who was from one of their projects. So it's just a nice tool that we have that we've been able to deploy in some situations. We also, of course, have pumps, and we provide the hose associated with that and the accessories. And local officials, I mentioned, or the fuel and the labor are their responsibility. We have a sandbag machine, an auto sandbag machine, and 2 manual sandbag machines. For the auto sandbag machine, not listed here, but that's a real workhorse for us. We do have to provide 2 operators with it, and those operators stay with that machine while it's in operation. They can train the locals on how to use it, but it is our responsibility to keep them with it. Locals are responsible for providing the equipment and the operators for loading the sand and also the sand. We may be able to access other sandbag machines outside of the Rock Island district because across the core there's quite a few now. I wanted to say 13, but I think there's more. It really depends. We try to align with the state on the request for these auto sandbag machines just because their operations are usually covering a much larger area, but we have deployed them to support a levee district or 2 in the past, so it just kind of depends. We mentioned the HESCO technical advisor on this. The link at the top is important. Basically, the information you see on the screen, there's a lot more detail and kind of the specifications for our flood fight material. So I would encourage you all to take a look at that. We also have some training videos up there if you haven't had a chance to look at those. It's some good information. Hopefully we will continue to build upon. Next slide, please. So this gives you an idea of the packaging for some of our supplies and equipment. We've had some best practices in how we store material, and this really helps us for shipping, and also will help you. We have these stored and ready to transport and pre-packaged standard amounts, and you kind of see underneath how that is configured. Vertical stacking is possible due to the packaging that aids in the larger volume of transportation and storage. And we can discuss the transportation requirements with you once we determine what you actually need. So it's always good if you have a need to reach out to us to talk through how you're actually going to be able to ship this or to pick this stuff up. A pickup truck can generally fit 1 pallet on a 6-foot bed and 2 on an 8-foot bed. So limits are often related to, weight restrictions or load restrictions as opposed to number of, what you can actually, the number of product. The county and state supplies are not going to be packaged the same way. The stuff that comes from us might look a lot nicer, I don't know. But so you just got to plan for that. I would just say for a recommendation, we prefer to issue in the crate or in the pallet instead of breaking them down. So like, for example, that 4x4x4 crate of sandbags holds 12,500 bags per crate, and they should be I think they're bundled in 500 or 1,000 per crate. We would prefer if you, like, for example, if you request 10,000 sandbags, we're probably going to give you 12,500. So just kind of give you an idea of how we're thinking, and we can talk to you more about that when things get crazy. Next slide. So I have some great folks in my office who wanted to really determine what the best way to load material would be on flatbeds, and so they came up with some drawings here that they put together to really show if you wanted to deploy, or if you wanted, 3 8-inch diesel pumps on a 48 or 53-foot truck. This is how we would try and set it up. So that would include all your suction hose and the wire baskets containing the discharge and other pertinences. And then also they did it for crucifoli. So it just gives you an idea of how we would load this onto the trucks if the request is received. The requester should plan on transporting any size pump via trailer, and the supplies all have to be tied down. So just be prepared for that when you're bringing your trucks out. And towing capability of the smaller pumps is only intended for short distances. They're not meant to be, it's not highway rated, so you shouldn't be towing those smaller portable pumps on the highway other than just crossing. But we just want to keep those in good shape. And we do now have 3 18-inch diesel pumps. We've got those right now deployed to Muscatine Island for a project, but those require a lot more planning. They are installed, the pipe it's welded HDPE pipe, so there has to be time consideration for procurement of that pipe or renting, whatever it is that we're going to do. It's not something that can happen in a couple of days. It might take a little bit longer for that. So that's just based on our first deployment of those. We're still capturing and developing that standard operating procedure. In addition to that pump, like you mentioned, the wire basket with the hose and connections all needs to be transported, and the weight and size of the baskets will vary depending on the size of the hose. Something to consider. Next slide. So our flood teams, one of the primary activities that is going on out there is data collection. It's very important that we capture we understand what's going on in the field, what's going on with the levees that are active that are in our PLA for 99 program. We're looking at ongoing flood response operations by the local communities and the levee sponsors, and we're trying to track the performance of those systems and temporary barriers. The other things that we could be doing out there or could be asked of us would be ground surveying for emergency measures. This is something that we've kind of in more recent years have been going out there and doing, where we've identified a community installing even a sandbag wall. We're trying to capture that survey height. We can also deploy our drones through our UAS program. And this is very similar to what the state is doing. So we might be doing similar things out there, but they can capture aerial photography, LiDAR, and heat sensing. And then if this is a large event where we're expecting we're going to be nearing or exceeding record flood stage, we're going to pull together our field data collection team that has the subject matter experts that are out there to really to identify the severe issues at those peak elevations, and they're following the crest down to document the performance of those systems. And they're doing that via the observations, aerial imagery, different surveys, but we have the right specific technical experts that are capturing that information. And then post-flood, that information is going to be used to help improve our timelines for our repairs. A lot of that data is collected and used as part of the rehabilitation process. It can also improve our accuracy of levee risk assessments and guide interim and long-term corrective actions, among lots of other things. Next slide. So this is just a lot of pictures of our great folks, flood area engineers that are out there performing that technical assistance. Hopefully, if you see one of these people out, you see that core shirt, you are reaching out and grabbing them and talking to them, introducing yourself, making sure that they know who you are and how they can support you. They're supplementing or training additional personnel on performing field patrols. They can also help provide response recommendations based on current and past observations. They're out there monitoring areas of distress, as mentioned, training on proper flood fight techniques, collecting data, identifying low spots, and making recommendations based on that. I think the big thing is that we hope that you consider them part of your flood fight team, flood fight operations, because they can really serve as an extra set of eyes and ears for you while they're out there, and it's also good training for them. Next slide. Okay, so Amanda asked that we highlight some examples of some of the technical assistance products that we've provided in the past that we might be able to assist you with and provide you with some reach-back assistance if you ever need that assistance. So what we've got here is in A, this is the levee system with an active repair area that is concerned about capturing all low spot freeboard areas. So this map was produced for the sponsor to basically communicate to volunteers where they need to focus their flood efforts. Map B is a typical incident map that we might create that's produced for levee breaches, and this provides an estimate of the inundation area and depth, and it's good for using for evacuation notifications and sending alert messages. And then in C, up there top right, this map was requested to estimate the inundation area of a community based on forecasted river conditions. And the community used it to inform residents and decide on whether to install emergency barriers or not. So lots of tools for helping you to make decisions. In D, it's an example of something, this is like typical product that comes out of our flood teams. Post-flood, we took the data that was captured during the performance data that was captured on the levee system, and we built this map showing all the areas of impact and areas of distress that were noted by the levee sponsor. And then that information supplemented the Public Law 8499 request for information that was provided that helped as part of that initial process for repairs. So products A, B, and C are made using existing data and tailored based on the needs of the requester. And then we can make a lot of variations to that as to suit the particular needs. Inundation mapping is now available, as we know, from different sources, and each of those are using some different modeling. But all of that data, this is just the kind of, it's all an estimate, so for awareness. We can also provide hydraulic modeling during an event. An example might be, for consideration might be when there is low confidence in available off-the-shelf products. If there's a levee breach prior to overtopping and specific guidance is needed to inform decisions. A levee that is actively breaching and not fully inundated, and there are questions on impacts to rivers, to river forecasts in the vicinity. Those are just some examples of And then a last would be temporary, an example would be if there's temporary barriers installed, like it could be push-up, it could be, again, a new barrier that's installed downtown can provide mapping for that. Next slide. This is just a plug for a great resource that's out there for mitigation planning and the Silver Jackets program, and hopefully many of you are aware. I think Tara she leads that she's part of that for the state of Illinois. Each state has a specific team that can provide you with a point of contact listed. The point of contact are listed within that link that's provided on the screen, and it's generally a multi-year effort tailored to the specific needs of your area, your community, and then it's a state-led team that's doing that work. The resources for the team's activities are provided through individual programs for each participating agency, and it's all based on authority and available funding. But we do have core Silver Jackets representatives that are part of that team, and we have the lead for the state of Illinois and the state of Iowa for that core representation. But again, there's a lot of examples of different products that have been developed and within the different states. That might be just good information for you to check out as you kind of decide and determine what you need, if you have any specific mitigation needs. Next slide. Lastly, this is just my points of contact for flood response, preparedness response, recovery operations. This is my team. And then below that is my other team, that's the lead flood area engineers that represent those colored areas on the map. So those lead flood area engineers are your door to the core, your main point of contact for flood-related, levee-related questions. They also take questions related to 408. They take questions related to operation and maintenance activities, lots of different things. So for sure, reach out to them if you have any specific questions. But you can also contact my team through that EOC EOC email. That will get everybody, so you can make sure you've got all the right people. Well, you get everybody in case somebody's not around. It's just the best way to get us. So I guess that's all I have for my brief. If there's any questions or.
Right. I don't see any questions in the chat. So I will say too, like Sarah said, if you see the folks out there in the red shirts, yeah, go ahead and grab them. But if you don't see them and you need them, use those contact links that Sarah just talked about, and we will get them to where you need them. So,
I just want to touch on, I want to appreciate everybody who presented today. I want to thank Jamie for his presentation on the system-wide improvement framework and their experience with that. It is a process. We know it can be a kind of feel like a headache in trying to maneuver through it, but our goal is always to try and ensure that we maintain sponsors' eligibility for repairs, and the system-wide improvement framework is the tool for us to do that for these complex issues. And I anticipate that we're only going to be using it more frequently down the road as we get the new language for the ER 501-1 as changes occur there. So we appreciate and are willing to work with the sponsors, with you all, to get through that process as carefully as possible, where we're not causing too much burden.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for calling in today. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I will be sending out a link to the recording for this in case you got other staff members who didn't attend. And I will be sending out PDFs of the presentations as well. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the point of contact listed in those presentations or to me. I'll get you in the right direction. So thanks, everybody. I'll stay online a little bit longer in case there's any lingering questions.